We are sitting here tonight with Nicholas Gibbs, who's going to help us co-host Tuesday night, the Good News channel here on Tuesday night. How you doing, Nicholas?
Doing well, Randy. Doing really well.
All right,
Exciting
good. Well,
times.
yeah. Well, later on in the show, one of the things we're going to be talking about is that the conference board has taken recession off the table. So there you go. They've been talking recession longer than anybody. Now they're saying, well, now our signals are saying something else. So we'll get into that in a little while. First, we want to talk about Tesla stuff. So probably there were sad people out there in Tesla land today. Were you sad? You
I've
were one of them?
been very sad all day. Not
Okay.
sad. Sad's not the right word. I've been um, very on edge, just waiting, refreshing my phone, going out to the car, seeing if anything's going
Oh,
with the car. Yeah. So, stock wise, if that's what you're referring to,
it's a-okay. Whatever happens, hey,
I mean,
buy more, buy
this,
more.
yeah, this time last week we are at like 184,
Right.
and now we're in 190. Like, come on.
Well, one of the things we like to do on this channel, though, is we do like to analyze these moves and at least see if it doesn't mean that we necessarily pinpoint exactly what happened, but doing the analysis is useful because it allows us to talk about the things that are happening and things that might have impacted the stock today. So one of the things or two things, let's take number one and number two together. The market was down and the NASDAQ was down big time. So those would be things that normally Tesla would be maybe at a two times roughly, sometimes three, and today it was three times the NASDAQ. So those would be two things, I suppose, that could have accounted for most of today's action.
Yeah, I think today's action was just a lot of noise in the system. I think tomorrow we get Fed minutes, which sh- shouldn't really move anything, but it does.
Yeah,
So, algorithms get triggered by that. So we got Fed, and I think Bostic and a few other Fed officials will be speaking, and so they're gonna do their normal, you know, game where some are bullish, some are hawkish, and just back and forth. So I think markets kind of anticipating that. We had PPI, we had PCE, we've had CPI, and some of them came in a little hotter, some didn't. So it's like, okay, well, where are we? Is inflation coming down? Is it not? Is it seasonality? So you have like all of this confusion. You've got all this noise in the system. And then to add to it, you've got what people are considering really the only AI play out there, Nvidia having earnings tomorrow. And, there's lots of people who think, well, how's that going to look? Are they going to have a good quarter? Okay, so what if they do? What's their guidance? And I think, there's a lot of fear when it comes to that as well. So there's just a lot of things coming to fruition tomorrow and the next day and the next day. So really the rest of the week that I think the market is trying to digest and prepare for and properly position in case something really out of left field comes in. So I think that's what we saw today. And as you can imagine, Tesla sits at the intersection of all of that.
and Nvidia did get crushed again today. They got smacked really good. So a little the froth coming off of that
Yes.
massive increase that we've seen. Well, you mentioned the Fed, and all of a sudden, people are talking about rate hikes again, or fewer and later reductions in the Fed rate. Some people talking now second half and maybe only two. And not a few people talking about maybe one more hike before they start reducing. So that could definitely be taking some of the energy out of the market.
Yeah, you're probably right. That is definitely, but again, it's rhetoric. I mean, again, it was what a month and a half ago that we were essentially guaranteed three rate cuts. It was a month and a half ago that we thought they were going to start in March, and it was what maybe like 5 months prior to that we thought we were going to have more rate increases. And so the truth is, all these people who are giving their opinions and are trying to predict and all that, they don't know. What I would say is probably a more certainty than not is that we're probably not going to raise rates at this point. I think if you just look at what's happening around the world, inflation is going to come down one way or another by the nature of China is slowing down dramatically, if not in a recession. I believe Germany's in a recession. I believe Japan is now in a recession.
United
I don't
Kingdom.
know if it's yes. Is it the whole UK
Yeah.
is in a recession now? So I mean that alone really, that will slow down the world economy. And let's I know that we're in our own bubble here in the United States, but we're really affected by the world economy.
Of
And
course.
so if they aren't purchasing and spending as much because they're in recessions, that creates more supply. More supply leads to deflation. So I think I think it's a safe bet to say we won't get rate hikes. But yeah, it's very rational to say, well, maybe we won't get as many rate cuts. Maybe it'll take longer. I think that's more than rational. And if anybody says that they know how many rate cuts we have or when it's going to start, truth is they don't know. And
Yeah, they
I'm
don't know.
sticking
That's
to what
right.
I've been saying. Yeah, I'm sticking to what I've been saying all along, that when it happens, it'll happen suddenly. And odds are they'll start slow and then they'll ramp up because something's happening that's not the best. And they're going to try to get ahead of it. We don't know what it is. It might be a crazy unemployment surprise. It could be all of a sudden we go into a negative CPI month over month. It could be because there's more bank foreclosures or something, right? Like we don't know what it is. I don't think we're gonna have a collapse and some catastrophe happens. I think you never know, but I don't think that's what's gonna be. But I do think there will be something, and that's what's gonna force the Fed to move.
We also had today, we had Stellantis saying that their new strategy will be to eliminate payments to Tesla for emission credits. They're going to come out with 25 worldwide, 25 different models. And in the United States, I forget, I think it was like 5 new models this year. And they're just going to crush it out there. Now, by the way, I'm a big fan of Stellantis. I think they're doing a lot of things right. I think they're one of the ones that can come out of this well. But it's kind of a joke. I hope this didn't affect Tesla's price today, because it's kind of a joke to think that Stellantis in any meaningful way will reduce their emissions problem within the next 12 months or 15 months.
Yeah, I definitely don't think that affected Tesla's stock at all. In fact, we got the news out of Germany that more of the locals that live there voted against the expansion of Giga Berlin, and the stock went up in comparison, right? It went less down. So, like, if anything, that would have more of an impact than Stellantis CEO saying something. I think I shared that interview with you
Yes.
through X, and yeah, I think, hey, good on them. Great goals. Hope they're successful. But that's the same strategy that, Mary Barra thought they were going to go down. Ford was smart enough not to do that. Volkswagen thought that was going to be their path. And if there's one thing that we have seen, it's that having many, many models is not exactly the answer. And what was even more interesting to me in that interview was the thesis that the Stellantis CEO had, which was right now there's about 15, 17 major auto companies, big players,
Uh-huh.
and he sees it consolidating down to five. And he believes that they'll be one of the five. But if that's the case, that goes in line with the thesis that a lot of us Tesla investors have. And now we're hearing it from a CEO of one of those big 17. So it's very fascinating to see how what we've been talking about since what 2017, I think, is when people really started talking about this concept of, having, just like a Apple and Samsung having like a, GCP, Azure, or AWS, right? Just consolidating down to a few winners. It's starting to come through in the language of these CEOs, which is fascinating to watch unfold.
So do you have any winners and losers on your list?
Um, yeah, I do actually. I have Tesla as a clear winner. I have GM as a clear loser. I
Okay.
don't know about the rest.
Okay.
BYD, I think, will be in there, but
Yeah.
you never know what could happen. Tesla's the only one I'm confident in. Zero debt, best margins in the industry on the least amount of revenue. Well, obviously that's what
Right.
margins are. Um, like how do you compete with that?
Yeah.
Everyone else, it's hard to know. And GM, I feel like their leadership is all about, you know, their golden parachutes. Companies like Ford, at least I know there's still family in there. And
Yeah.
so they're more than just about their golden parachutes. So they're not just going to take on debt to make things look better and buy back their own stock just to boost things up. So yeah, so GM's the one that I would say is probably gonna go away.
Okay. All right. Another one on my list was that other EVs were down big today. And that may have been because Mach-E dropped their prices, created some new, very good financing on the Mach-E. And then other talk like from Xpeng, I want to pronounce it right, Xpeng, in terms of saying, boy, the price cuts are going to start coming again. So that could have potentially impacted Tesla's price today.
Yeah, I mean, uh, look, it's do you want to buy a ICE vehicle or do you want to buy a Tesla? Outside of China, that's pretty much the options, right? Nobody like people don't want to buy EVs really outside of China. They want to buy Teslas. So I think everybody's got to do what they have to do. At this point, Ford is saying, okay, we're going to take a loss on the Mach-E's, on some of these Ford F-150 Lightning, and we're going to, I mean, I guess the rumor is that they're going to come out with their 2024 model, but they're trying to clear out the 2023 models, and they're essentially just taking a loss on it. I mean, this is going to be impactful for them, but what choice do they have? Right? They've got to be able to help dealers. They've got to move this inventory so that they can bring in new ones. But I think you're going to see a huge pullback from all these companies, and it's not just about slashing prices, right? It's about clearing out the inventory, but then it's going to be a chicken and egg for all of them because you're never going to be able to get to a profitable place without scale. Yet they're stuck in this weird place where they can't go to scale because it's too expensive. They're not profitable. So what do you do?
So the other thing that happened today was that Tesla's China numbers came in a little thin. You just mentioned we have a recession in China. We have a recession in three out of the top four. China's not officially in recession, I don't think, but we have a recession in three of the top five economies in the world. Tesla needs sales in China. They need sales in Germany, although Tesla's German sales were just fine. They need sales in these countries if they're going to be able to continue to increase their total sales. So maybe there was some general malaise out there with regard to the EVs because these countries where most of the sales have been taking place are now all in some kind of trouble.
Um, Maybe, but I don't know. I would also take into account that it is the Chinese New Year going on. I would take into account that they still are on the first half of the quarter, so they're still doing exports. So there's a lot of noise in there as well. So I don't know. I wouldn't take any one data point like that too seriously. Every time we've done that, we've turned out to be wrong.
Right.
So and they're well ahead of where they were at this point, I believe, well ahead of where they were last year. So
Yes.
I think I'm not too worried about it.
So you mentioned at the beginning of the program that what you've been sad about all day is that you have not yet been selected to download your FSD 12.2.1, but it's out and it's going out to lots and lots of folk. Well, I don't know how many. Somebody said yesterday it might have only been 0.5% of all the folks that own it. But one Tesla engineer said today that the new FSD approach using neural net end to end was able to learn to do a U-turn by itself with absolutely no input. Other people mentioning that they have had a very, very good experience with the product. Holmars said, well, but he's all used to using the 12. And he's like, well, this wasn't quite as good as what I've been having. So, but he wasn't like sad. He wasn't upset about it. He was just mostly, well, it may be a little step backwards. which is typical on a new print. So anyway, what did you think about all of that? I know you're excited to get to step up and do yours, but what did you think about all that?
So the rumor on the street is that it's gonna roll out to your point, 0.5 to 2% of eligible beta or people who have beta, right? And so that's not going to discriminate on vehicles, so hardware 4, hardware 3. So we all know that. We've all heard that beaten to death to this point on every single episode I've heard. All these of every channel, all these things have been repeated ad nauseum. Um, I will say you can't. I wouldn't take what Omar said too concrete. He was testing it in the rain for the first time. It was heavy rain. It was at night. He was also just. I mean, he even said that he was hangry and all this stuff. So he was just in a bad mood in general. So take that with a grain of salt, and we'll see what some of his other tests look like. But I think things are very promising, and what we're seeing is everybody's having the same type of reaction that Omar was having about it, talking about it solves so many problems. It's so smooth, so human like. And, now, a lot of those things when you use FSD are very anecdotal based, right? It's based on how you feel in it. I would say for people who use FSD every day, the way I do, when you watch these videos, you can see it. But if you don't have FSD or if you don't use it every day, you probably can't tell those like little nuances that you can just tell when it's coming to a stop sign. Like you can almost feel it watching these videos when it's gonna like how it stops and everything. And I would say right now with 11.9, it works. I would say like 99% perfectly. 1% it doesn't work perfectly, and
Right,
then the only other critique I would say is very robotic, right? Like it'll do the right thing, but it'll be robotic.
right.
And that can put you a little cautious at times, but when you watch these 12 videos, like everybody's having the same reaction about the smoothness and how it's fixing all these little problems. It's as if, you know, somebody was sitting there and they were just doing a line graph, and they had a point here and a point here and a point here and a point here. And then they just stitched all the lines together. But now with 12, we just smoothed it out. So it's
Mm.
a nice curve. It's like that's what 12 did. And so what's so bullish to me about this is that it's not just smoothing things out, it's solving things that we haven't seen before. So before, all these updates have been very, well, what's it feel like? Is it smooth, whatever? And to the eye, you can't really tell, and you're just looking to see if it made a mistake. Today, we saw it do a U-turn. We saw it do a U-turn. We've never seen that before. Okay, maybe we've seen one or two videos of it kind of slowly, sketchily doing it. It did a U-turn. It handled roundabouts flawlessly. It had it got off of a roundabout on one of these videos. It had an immediate exit to get to that had to cross over 3 lanes, and it had to go over white lines and everything. It did it
Mm.
flawlessly, no hesitation or anything. I mean, it to me, I posted this on X, and the way I would say I'm viewing it right now is that this reminds me of when ChatGPT came out. I think it came out like in October, and I had ChatGPT from like October all the way through December through January, and I work in tech, and nobody seemed to know about this. And I was sitting there telling people like, "Don't tell anybody about this because this is really cool and it's making me really productive, and I'm coming up with great ideas and doing really good stuff very fast, and nobody knows about it." Um, but then after January, it caught on like wildfire. Everybody all of a sudden knew about it. It was like this exponential curve of people knowing about it. Right now, FSD 12 feels like that moment when I first discovered ChatGPT, and because we all follow the space, so that's why we were so early on it. But that like October, December, that's what this feels like right now. Like people don't understand what just happened, and we're seeing it, and we're hearing the reactions, and we're seeing things like U-turn, all this. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying we've solved it,
Mhm.
but damn, it's early February, and this is where we are. I mean, we got a lot of year left. This is going to be fascinating. So, anyways, I can keep going. I am waiting for it. I'm anticipating. I keep refreshing my phone to see. It's been all day. I've gone out to the car, turning things on and off. I reset the screen. I'm just trying to do anything to get it pushed to me. Um, I have been one of the earlier people who've gotten to software at certain pushes. You know, this time doesn't seem like I'm one of the lucky ones. So we'll see what happens. But I am so looking forward to this. I'm so excited. I really think a seminal moment that people are sleeping on, or maybe not sleeping on, because
Yeah,
people don't know
yeah,
about this in
yeah.
general. But it's a seminal moment, and I'll shut up now.
Well,
I'm excited.
on other Tesla software news, and this gets completely buried. People are probably not aware of this one at all. Tesla's navigation system is set to receive some additional capabilities, including some Waze-like features, such as displaying accidents on the road. The information, courtesy of our favorite Tesla hacker, Green, details some of his findings when digging into some of the code for software update 2024.2.6. Tesla's not only expanding its map coverage and introducing a new dialect in select regions, but also adding accident and road closure informations, as well as routing options, or in some parts of the country, routing, I guess, options.
Yeah.
So,
So it's funny you say this because last night when FSD 12 started rolling out, I went out to my car. Like I said, I was checking, and all of a sudden I saw a download button. I'm like, oh, and I go and I click on it, and sure enough, it's just a navigation update. So I'm curious to see if the navigation update has anything to do with what's been talked about here, these Waze Light features. But yeah, I had a false alarm last night.
I'm so sorry, but those sound great. I know
They
that
sound fantastic.
we use the Tesla navigation system pretty much exclusively. Once in a while, though, we'll still get over onto our phones, when we're driving along because of there's an accident or some reason, something that's blocking, traffic for miles and miles, and we're just curious to see how long we're going to be stuck. So it'd be nice to not have to do that. So we have a bunch of stuff from these different car companies. I'm just going to run over it quickly. We have Fisker in the spotlight because it received a New York Stock Exchange notice that the company is not in compliance with the stock exchange. They've been under $1 for too long, and so they're probably going to get delisted. We have got Lucid with horrible numbers coming out the other day. Rivian, they're going to spill their numbers this week. What else we got here? All kinds of stuff. Actually, the entire sector, other than the ones that we know of that are doing well. I'm a big fan also of Kia and Hyundai. I think they're doing well. I think Polestar, Volvo, they seem to be doing fairly well. But when you get past those two, we're talking about Mercedes and Volkswagen, and they're not doing that well at all. It just seems like a 5-horse race at this point with the ones we just mentioned. I mean, a couple of the Chinese companies seem to be doing okay. I guess we've got people that don't really pay attention. You got Geely, and you've got it's a BAC, I think it is, if I got the letters right. They're major OEM supply. They typically build cars and put other people, they sell them to other labels. And there's a couple of 3 of those companies over there, but Geely, they're a major factor. They've got the MG, which is a big deal in Europe. So yeah, I mean, it kind of seems like there's a lot of negative news in the sector, and I thought that might have also been part of maybe there's an overhang right now in the sector.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I mean, in general, we've seen, autos decline for quite some time now. So, you know, adding a recession into this, adding the fact that nobody can really make profitable EVs other than Tesla, right? All that like compounds on the sector as a whole. Um, Not to, deviate from this optimistic topic, but just I just want to highlight to everybody we're talking about FSD 12 right now and everything that's going on. And all of these other Tesla killers, these competitors, everyone, they're just hardware. They're just the vehicle and they're struggling this hard. Meanwhile, I'm sitting here telling you that this could be a seminal moment in the industry right now. So not only is Tesla leaps and bounds most profitable vehicle, let alone EV vehicle out there that's mass produced, But now they're in the seminal moment to redefine what a vehicle is with FSD potentially, right? This might be that year. It's looking very likely.
Right.
So even if you start talking about BYD, who you could say is in second place with EV production, all that, I don't think they're profitable yet. They don't have
Barely.
software.
They do make money. Yeah.
Okay, so barely, but still, they don't have software.
They're not,
The
no,
software is
they're not they're not working, according to them, they're not working on full self-driving. Yeah.
exactly. And if you would have said at least outside of China, because I think the China market is hard to really understand where autonomy is there and who's doing what there. But when you look outside of China, Waymo, I mean, they've been scaling for which feels like decades, right? And doesn't seem like they've gotten a lot of traction. Cruise just lost their head of hardware, I believe it was. They lost their CEO. That they're off the roads right now. I mean, oh my goodness, this is this is just a moment, and I get it. The stock was down today, but as I'm seeing it down, I'm just sitting here laughing because at the same time, I was listening to a Lex Friedman podcast with Bill Ackman that he had on
Yeah.
today, and he's talking about the intelligent investor. Uh, one of Warren Buffett's favorite books. Um, Graham wrote it, I believe. Um, but he's sitting there talking about he likes to find these companies that have more than foreseeable growth into the future that you can, and normally these companies that have these foreseeable growth stories that are going to stand the test of time, you see them, but at that point everybody knows about them, so they're so expensive they're not worth it. And that's when he likes to get in there, is whenever there's something happens. He used Chipotle, for example, with the whole E. coli scare,
Right.
and that's what allowed him to get into Chipotle. I'm sitting here watching Tesla go down with FSD 12 coming out, with companies, Fisker being delisted essentially, Cruise giving up. Nobody else is profitable. And we are here with 12 and Tesla. It's so funny how like these things come into your life at the right time just to reinforce your thesis and everything. I don't know. It's been a very interesting day as I keep refreshing every 2 seconds.
Not to mention the robot. All right. So,
Yeah.
so
We can't even go there yet.
can't even go there. So the conference board put out their leading economic index today, leading economic indicators for the US. It fell by 0.4% in January 2024, following a 0.2% decline in December of 2023. And by the way, another decline in November. I could go back and go back. And then the LEI contracted by 3% over those last 6 months total. And that was just a little bit less than the 4.1% decline over the previous 6 months. So the leading economic indicators has been doing horrible for over a year. Actually, it goes even back further than that. So the quote from them on their website said, the US LEI fell further in January as weekly hours worked in manufacturing continued to decline. And we saw that in the labor statistics 3 weeks ago. And then they also said that the decline, continued to decline, and the yield spread remained negative. We know that. And then business cycle indicators, while the declining LEI continues to signal headwinds to economic activity, for the first time in the past 2 years, 6 out of the 10 components were actually positive contributors over the last 6-month period ending in January. And as a result, the leading index currently does not signal recession ahead. While no longer forecasting a recession in 2024, we do expect real GDP growth to slow to near zero. Well, that's a pretty close call. I mean, if you're saying that your indications are now that it's not actually going to flop over into recession, but you're saying it's near zero, could be, how much does it take for that to go slightly one way or slightly the other way? So that's not tremendously encouraging, but let me finish it up here. The conference board coincident economic index. So if people pay attention to this, and you really should, if you're an investor and you want to know about the general overall economy, knowing about these parts of what the conference board does is really important. They said the CEI for the US rose by 0.2%, in January to 112.1. after a 0.2% increase in December. So the CEI has been going up. And that's the coincident economic index, meaning it's measuring things right now as they're happening. And but it had been down all last year. So this is another indication for them that things are getting a little better. But the CEI's component indicators, I'm sorry, I wanted the Conference Board lagging. I'm sorry, the lagging economic index for the U.S. rose by 0.4% in January to 118, reversing a decline of exactly the same amount in December. The lag is up to 0.9% over a 6-month period from July to January, following a decline of 0.1% in the previous 6 months. So they're saying the U.S. LEI did not signal a recession in January, as 6 out of the 10 components were good. So what do you think? Are we, we talked about this last week. I've asked everybody. Larry is still 100% sure we're going to be in recession. If we're not already in recession, we'll be in recession in Q2. I'm still at 50-50 on third quarter. And by the way, it's pretty interesting. All week long, as I've seen the positives and the negatives, I'm still sitting at 50-50. It's impossible. It's kind of like these guys are saying zero, right? Seems like it's going to be at zero plus or minus.
Yeah. I'll continue to say, well, I'll speak out both sides of my mouth. I think we've been in a rolling recession. I think Kathy Woods has nailed it on this one. You've seen it go sector by sector. Um, I don't think we're going to fall into a recession this year. If we fall into recession, I think I said this last week. I think it would be in 2025.
Right.
Um,
That
but
is what
I don't think it's going to happen. We're going to slow down. Like there's no way we can't slow down because we've been slowing down. Rates haven't come down at all, so that's just putting even more pressure onto the economy as inflation comes down. And then you see, look, China's in a recession. Just because they don't give us real numbers doesn't mean they're
right.
not in a recession. So China's in a recession. Japan's in a recession. Germany's in a recession. UK's in a recession. I mean, it- un- we've been strong and we've made it this long, but it's just like COVID. It started in the Far East and slowly made its way to us, and eventually it hit us. I think we are going to see a big slowdown. This near zero, it doesn't sound wrong to me, but the Fed's going to have to cut to prevent a recession. If they continue to stay where they're at, it's going to be a problem. Now, the reason I think we won't go into a recession, and this isn't a good reason, but we are continuing to have a good economy, as people will say, because people in the United States have a sugar addiction to spending.
Yeah.
We spend so much money that we don't have, from the government to people, right? The government just continues to pump out money like they have it, right? Whether it's to other foreign wars, whether it's to social programs, whether it's to giving out checks to people. And we do it as well, right? I mean, I don't, and I'm sure you don't, but in general, right? The colloquial we, people are addicted to their credit cards. People have so much credit card debt. And I'm not wrong about this. The numbers are out there. You can see it. We're at all-time high credit card debt. We're at all-time automobile debt. You can see how many people are defaulting on their credit cards, defaulting on their car loans. So you can see it out there. And I think it's all of this fake You know what it is? It's no different than Ford and GM throwing cars into their dealership. It's the same thing, right? They're not actually making these sales. They're just stuffing it into the
Right.
dealerships. People don't actually have this money to spend. They're just stuffing it into their credit cards. And then they're just rolling over the balance and taking all this interest. That's going to come to a head eventually. And that's kind of why I was saying if it's going to happen, it's 2025. But there's going to have to come a point where this stops. And there's a few different ways where it can stop. Either it stops in the sense where the rates come down, things become more affordable because of deflation, and that allows people to continue spending and continue on with their sugar addiction, or it's going to be a recession and it will have to reset things. We'll have to have a reset. So So I don't know what's going to happen. I can't predict the future. All I know is I still don't have FSD 12, and it's upsetting.
So you mentioned about, of course, different parts of the economy in recession. Manufacturing, I think everybody agrees, manufacturing's in recession, has been for at least 18 months. Today we had an interesting two companies reporting on the same day, which really gave us, I think, a real good picture of where the economy is. So Home Depot comes out, they were not happy. Their numbers were down, store by store, their numbers were down. I mean, it was, comparative stores, their overall sales were up, but not as much as the street was expecting. They made a little more profit. That was good, but their expectation, their guidance was, nope, still going to continue to be bad. Now, what do you buy at Home Depot? You buy at Home Depot, you just bought a house or you're making repairs to your home. And those are bigger ticket items and they're durable goods, as a lot of durable goods in there, which is what the part of the economy that's been hurting. In the meantime, you had Walmart come out, and Walmart had a good quarter and they gave good guidance for the rest of the year. What do people buy at Walmart? They buy the things they need on a daily basis, inexpensive appliances, not durable goods. Sure, there's a few durable goods here, but most of it is the stuff you just buy on a, $50, $20, $10, whatever. And it's the cheap place to buy stuff. So that kind of, to me, gave us a picture. They even said in their analysis that, folks were coming where they could buy inexpensive things. So does that picture sound right to you, or what do you think?
So let me just say one thing real quick, just to put this out there, because I saw this today, and I just at least wanted to put out there into the world. Gary Black today tried to, I don't know, debate Omar, if you will, because Omar was saying, "Oh, good thing China's advertising or Ford's advertising the Mach-E, sales are down, whatever." And Gary Black decided to make a point by using Walmart's earnings to say, "No, people are still spending or whatever." You just said it very well. We're talking about $10, $20 things, not financing big ticket items. So yes, of course, Walmart looked good. Walmart's one of those companies that can be the basic staples, right? It's going to be your groceries, your laundry detergent, your mops, basic little things, little toys for your kids that are more affordable. Those are the type of businesses that do well on during a slower economy when people have tight financial books. Look at Home Depot. Great point again you just made there, Randy. People are spending less there. They're doing arguably less renovations in their homes, right? Bathroom remodels, kitchen remodels. Where do most people tend to get the capital to do that? They tend to pull it from their house, maybe through a HELOC. HELOCs probably aren't going to be fixed rates right now. Maybe they are. Either way, really high, expensive money to be borrowing out of your house. People probably aren't going to be doing that right now, especially if they're strapped, right? And especially when you're strapped, you're not really thinking about taking on a big renovation, let alone taking out a loan against your house. So, really, if you just take those two as a proxy for what's going on in the economy, they're telling you everything you need to know. It's right there. Just,
That's definitely what I thought.
apply
Hey,
a
we're
little
on
common
agreement.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, listen to Randy. Like and
No,
subscribe.
no.
He tends to be right.
Only no. Listen to Nicholas when he agrees with me. No, that's it. All right. Well, let's look at where the markets are right now. Maybe that'll tell us something too. So we've got Tesla down another $1.11 in the after hours. I think that's not quite as low as it had been during the middle of the day, because it did get down to almost 190, I think, during the day today. What was it? Actually 189.23 was the low. So yeah, it's at 192.66. So it's still well off the low, even though it's still down a little bit in the after hours. Let's see here. We need to look at bonds. So the bonds, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. So in
How bad?
the pre-market, the 10-year is up 1.2 basis points. You got the 2-year up a half a basis point. So a little narrowing of the inversion there. That's nice. And the 2-month 2.5 up basis points. So a little widening of that inversion. Anyway, I don't think we have much here that helps us other than the fact that everything is up. So having the treasuries continue to go up is just not good. What that's saying is at least right now, the market, we're sitting on the 10-year now at 4.287, almost 4.3. And the market is basically saying that they are now believing higher for longer, and higher for longer than they thought it was 3 weeks ago. So that's what it's telling me anyway. I don't know if is that what it's telling you?
Yeah, I mean, it's telling me that there's uncertainty, right? I mean, if we were more confident that inflation was coming down and that the Fed believed that, what you see, I think, with the 10-year is a proxy for what the market thinks the Fed thinks.
Right.
Right. So the market thinks that the Fed thinks that we might have to wait longer because it seems like inflation's a little bumpy, right? It's so much noise in there that the 10-year is not doing just what the 10-year should do. It's speaking what market thinks Fed thinks.
Yeah, and I think it does think that. I agree with you. I think it also sometimes thinks, but the Fed might be wrong. And so sometimes it's getting out ahead of the Fed because it thinks the Fed is going in the wrong direction. I think that was happening,
That's true.
a month ago. And now they're going, well, whatever is true, if truflation is right instead of the Fed, right now, I think the bonds are saying it doesn't matter if they're right or wrong. The Fed isn't going to move. So they start to then look more towards the Fed. That would be my theory anyway for the moment. So oil is unchanged in the after hour or the pre-market, but it did drop today down to 78 again. So this is the first time we've taken anything away from this kind of gradual increase we've seen over the last couple of weeks. Mostly, I think, due to Red Sea activity and Middle East activity. But because really, from what I'm reading, there's really plenty of supply. They're not hurting at all in terms of supply anywhere. It's mostly, I think, anticipating maybe things get worse.
Yeah.
Natural gas up 6% in the pre-market. That is finally bouncing back. I mean, it's so low. It's still sitting at 1.6, $1.68. But it was as low as $1.53. So, I mean, we're looking at, that's a little bit of a move there. Gold is, the dollar. I missed the dollar. The dollar is dipping a little bit. Gold is, call it even. It's up, it's down $5, but 2034, that's about it has bounced off that 2002, 2003 range. So back up into the 2030 range. Copper down a little bit, down 0.2%, call it, at 386. Bitcoin staying right in that 52,000 range. Thoughts on Bitcoin? You know more about Bitcoin than me by about 1,000 times.
No, not much thought. It's again, I'm of the Warren Buffett mindset. While I love the idea of Bitcoin, I think it could solve a lot of problems. I'm still of the mindset that I struggle to invest in something that doesn't produce anything.
There you go.
I can't model that.
Right. Okay. And then in the equities, we've got the NASDAQ down 34. We have got the S&P down 1.75, and we got the Dow up 7 points. So basically, S&P and Dow are even, with the NASDAQ continuing to show some pressure as we go into tomorrow. And as I like to do, let's run back one more time and see if Tesla's changed. Oh, well, it's improved a little, only down 99 cents now. So what have you got? Anything else on your mind today? Other things that are causing you to think? I know you've only got one thing in your mind.
It's all that's on my mind. It's all that's on my mind. There's nothing else. This and watching my wife's Uber come back from the airport. That's it.
I see. All right, there you go.
Still no update.
All right. Well, we have earlier today, I did a video with Brian White where we went over my 2026 theory. And I'm going to keep pounding on this 2026 theory because guess what? Other people are joining me in it now. Now they probably didn't read my stuff or listen to my stuff. They probably came to it on their own accord. But it looks to me, and it continues to look to me like 2026 is just going to be this amazing, amazing year when everything comes together, everything is executing. And if 2/3 of it executes, we're still going to be looking at a price for earnings that could be in the $20 range. And if earnings are in the $20 range, stock is going to be in the over $1,000 range. And that doesn't even count things like, what do you want to call it? Robotaxi. It counts a little bit of Optimus because by that time, everybody I talk to thinks there will be some Optimus production and shipping by 2026. So I don't know, looking like $20 by 2026. And Brian and I went over a list of the things that I think are going to happen by 2026. And he was in agreement with me on 8.5 of them.
Wow.
So we were,
And I'll say Brian's been right a lot.
Brian knows the factories. He knows them really, really well. All right. So I'll put a card for that right here. So you guys can go back and check that out if you didn't already see it. And
Randy, real quick, before you go,
yes,
I want to hear from you. When will FSD beta be stalled? What's your prediction?
Yeah, this is one of those ones. Here's what I've said about it in the past, and I'll say it again. I think you almost said it a few minutes ago. I don't think that Tesla's engineers, the ones who work on a day-to-day basis, know. What they know is they've got a trajectory. And like with ChatGPT and others that have talked about this kind of stuff, all of a sudden it's going to be one day it doesn't quite work, and the next day it works almost flawlessly. I think that's what's going to happen. So predicting it is really hard. What my 2026 theory is that it will definitely be working in 2026.
All right. So no bolder calls beyond that.
I wish I could. Yeah. I mean, it seems, I know this. We have one of those other rules. It's called the grandmother rule. My wife's car. There's the grandmother rule. When grandma is comfortable with it, okay, not just willing to ride in it, but comfortable with it, feels like they're not stressed by driving it. That's supposed to be one of the really big, proofs that we're almost there. My wife came home yesterday from work and she goes curb to curb, and it was perfect.
Ooh, and that's before 12.
And that was before 12. Yeah. So that's a pretty good indicator right there.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big indicator. My wife won't drive without it now, which is shocking to say the least. So.
All right.
So this year, it's my prediction. This
year's your prediction. Okay. All right. Well, I think
it happens this year.
I think you're probably right, but I'm going to stick with my little theory.
Love it.
All right, Nicholas. Hey, thank you so much for bringing the good news on this Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday night. And I do hope that the good news for you will be that one time you'll click that thing and sure enough, there it'll be there. And to all of you out there, it has been great talking to you.